Hello and welcome to CIO News. I am Khushbu Soni, the founder and chief editor at CIO News. This is our recorded series on the topic of Tech Talk, which is powered by Trellix, on the topic of rapid detection and response. It is my pleasure to invite my guest for today. We have Raje, the Chief Information and Transformation Officer at Health Assure, a dynamic and a visionary senior leader with strong domain knowledge and technical capabilities, deep understanding of business with strategic and tactical hands-on experience. He's worked in leadership roles in diverse sectors, including insurance, healthcare, technology and financial services, and is a global expert with 26 plus years of experience. Ninal, it's an absolute pleasure to have you today, and I am really looking forward to, get your perspectives and your experience on this topic.
Thank you so much, Khushbu, and to the CIO News. It has been an absolute pleasure to keep interacting with you. And I think this is a platform that gives us an opportunity to share our thoughts, our opinions as well. And in the bargain, we learn from each other as well. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Ninal. Means a lot. Awesome. I'm going to invite Arvind Sharma from Trellix. He's the APAC solution architect at Trellix. And Arvind has 21 plus years of experience working with leading tech companies. Arvind has helped many CISOs in evaluating and deploying cybersecurity solutions in their IT infrastructure. Arvind, thank you so much for joining us and looking forward to having this interaction with you.
Hi, Khushbu. Thank you for inviting me. I've always had really interesting discussions in CIO News, and I'm looking forward to another one. I'm really excited.
Awesome. Thank you. So to begin with, I wanted to put across my first question around the ransomware landscape. Arvind, since you've been interacting with a lot of CISOs, what are the key trends and challenges you see in the current landscape of ransomware attacks?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I've been having these discussions with a lot of CISOs across APJ. And what I figured out is one of the major reason why there have been so many ransomware attacks is the mean time to detect, right? All the security operations team, they are under so much of alert noise that they're not able to detect the ransomware at the right time, right? In the initial stages and prevent it at there and then, right? So there's so many alert noise coming in the security operations, which make this very difficult for their team, to detect early and to prevent it. And secondly, what I've seen is once a particular organization has become a successful target of ransomware, there's a very high chance of a repeated attack in the same organization. So once you're vulnerable, you kind of have a target on your back, and the same attackers keep on attacking it. So it's a very difficult situation to be in once your organization is under that threat.
Right, absolutely. Thank you, Arvind. On that, Nana, as per the trends that we've been seeing and some of them highlighted by Arvind, the current threat landscape, that we see, how do you as a CISO measure these and communicate the cyber resilience of your organization, especially in the context of ransomware threats to the stakeholders?
Actually, it's a very pertinent question, Khushbu, and thanks for sort of starting that off, Arvind. When it comes to sort of cybersecurity and ransomware threats, according to me, there are two types of organizations: those that have been hacked and those that don't know that they're hacked. It's not a question of if, but when. Believe me when I'm saying this, organizations will get hacked. There'll be security breaches as well. It's just a matter of time. So how does one sort of get themselves and organizations get themselves to be sort of build the guardrails, make sure that they are secure? And then let's kind of then jump into the measurement and communication. So, I mean, if I have to put it forward, the way we can go ahead and put our sort of landscape in terms of security fabric, because first we need to kind of appropriately get the security posture in, raise the security fabric appropriately, train our people, and so on and so forth, right? So first and foremost, I mean, there is a need for identification, perform a risk and threat and vulnerability assessment to identify potential threats and actors and attack vectors as well. Now, this step also helps sort of to determine how well the company is prepared to respond to attacks. The second one is protect, So once you identify, you need to protect. This step also, of course, addresses how cyber attacks are prevented by using sort of technologies such as firewalls, IPS, IDS, another cybersecurity analysis software, and so on and so forth. Then, of course, we have to detect. And the fourth one is, according to me, it's a response. Once you have the identification, you have the protection, and you have a detection, then you have to respond appropriately. So response is appropriately required, not only internally but externally as well, and of course the regulators as well. And then, of course, finally, we have to recover it as well. This step, of course, involves sort of activities to recover damaged systems and services, recover disrupted business activities, and help the business sort of resume operations as quickly as possible. That's where the recovery stage is. Now, I mean, the term cyber resilience is being used by sort of many organizations today to refer to organizational resilience against cyber incidents and breaches. Hence many cyber sort of resilience matrix. Now let's talk about the measurement, right? These matrix at the organization scale are sort of oriented towards a combination of good cybersecurity hygiene and incident response. Now, cyber resilience matrix can be sort of specified in few of these categories. I'll just kind of name a few. It is all about averting social engineering, engaging threat intelligence, address vulnerabilities. Then you can talk about handle cyber incidents as well, resist malware, very important here, and resist system intrusions, and of course the all infamous DDoS attacks. And more importantly, we need to kind of also protect credentials, protect key assets, and measure and minimize all the damages. Now, when we talk about measurement, there is this concept called CVSS. It stands for the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, and that's where the metric comes into picture. Now, what is this CVSS? It is basically a score of vulnerability. It is computed in the range of sort of, if I'm not mistaken, around 0 to 10 with a margin of a 0.5 error. In this, there are sort of three groups which are demarcated. I mean, one is the base, the second is temporal, and the third is environmental. Now, the base and temporal are very, very important. These metrics are, in fact, scores determined by selection of qualitative and nominal values. Now, base matrix reflects a vulnerability exploitability, scope, and then you have talking about potential impacts of exploitation as well. Temporal matrix reflects the current state of exploiting techniques or code availability, all right, and the workarounds thereof. Environmental is all about customization. So these are very three important elements when it comes to the matrix, and this is utilized world over by a lot of organizations. It's a tried and tested sort of methodology for measuring this. And how does one communicate? There are two types of communication. One is to your own internal people in terms of the board, and the second is to the employees itself. Now, when you talk about the communication to the board, be it in your audience, and in fact, you have to talk the language to the board, the way they understand the language, Otherwise, if we kind of talk about cyber risks, a language to the board, they're not going to understand. So talk to them about in their language they understand, and communicate the severity to them and losses. If somebody is not able to kind of, or we're not investing in cybersecurity landscape and fabric, they're not going to approve the investments. So that's how you're going to kind of talk to the board. And the last being the employees, So very, very important. We have to communicate to the employees and regular sort of cybersecurity awareness updates, mailers, create cybersecurity KPIs. Very, very important. Okay. Incorporate cybersecurity into employee performance review. So I'll give an example. Our organization, we in fact have included this in the performance measurement itself in their performance reviews. So they know what needs to be done, and they are kind of evaluated on those bases as well. Whole regular trainings, which is absolutely required, and encourage questions and feedback, because one thing which people avoid is feedback, and that is something which is absolutely required. And so make this entire cybersecurity program to be impossible to ignore. One thing from my side, and recommendation is, now in case one gets hacked by any ransomware, do not succumb to the attacker's demand at all. First of all, isolate the entire affected network system, reinstall and restore from backup, and hence, in fact, in my opinion, backup becomes the most It seems to be very trivial, but it becomes the most important element in this entire cybersecurity sort of posture in the fabric. There's a long
Absolutely.
response. Sorry for that, but
No, absolutely. I think it is, you covered pretty much. So it does make sense, right? Right from identifying the current threat landscape, while we say that, we deploy all of these solutions, but at the end of the day, it's the people who are the most vulnerable. And, ensuring there is enough awareness and like some of the pointers that you mentioned in the program, absolutely apt. Arvind, my question on that is, in an integrated security architecture, how does Trellix solutions complement existing security technologies to enhance ransomware detection and response capabilities?
Absolutely. And first of all, to answer your question, I'm going to take a lot of points that Ninad made, right? Very, very interesting points. I think Ninad started with the very initial approach towards cybersecurity itself, which is planning, preventing, detecting, respond, recover. Right? This whole thing becomes much easier if you have an integrated approach, right, to all these stages, right? So if you plan, once you are so Ninad was talking about VAPT and so when you do those vulnerability assessments, you understand the gaps within your infrastructure. It could be on your endpoints, it could be on your network, it could be your application, and so on, right? Once you know what your gaps are, once you know which is your high risk assets, once you know which are your VIP users, right? Once you know those kind of asset information, you have that, then is when you can make sure that you have a right amount of prevention, detection, and response strategy, right? And once you have an integrated solutions, right? Now looking at even Gartner talks about things on each and every layer, on endpoint, in SecOps, or at a network level. There are now discussions around XDR and NDR. Right. So earlier on, the discussion used to be very limited to endpoint or EDR, but that was not enough for the organizations, right? So they had to look at what's happening at the network, and put AI and ML at a network layer, understand what are the kind of threats, the new age threats that are happening over there. And the NDR approach is now what Gartner also talks about, where you need to have your investments in. The other one is the overall security operations, right? So if you've invested in an endpoint security network, your firewalls, and so on, right? If you invested in those components, all of them will come in play once you are under a threat, right? All of us know that once you have a ransomware threat, and ransomware threats normally work from phases where a threat might come from a phishing mail. Right now, if the threat comes from a phishing mail, now your email security might be able to help you out with that. Or if the user goes ahead and clicks on that particular link, then your endpoint security might come into play, and so on. Right. So there are various security solutions which will come into play at each stage of that ransomware. Once you have that integrated approach, once you have a visibility of what's happening on your endpoint, network, cloud, email, all your threat vectors, then is once you have a confidence in your security posture. Right. So what Trellix does is, to answer your question, what Trellix does is Trellix provides a single platform, an XDR platform, where our customers can integrate their existing investments or their investments in Trellix. So our XDR platform is an open platform. So we do not want our customers to replace their existing investments. No. So if you invest in third-party firewalls, third-party endpoints, and so on, integrate that into an XDR platform, so you have a single pane of glass for all your security threats. Integrate that with your threat intelligence platforms. It could be one threat intelligence platform, it could be multiple. Right? Integrate with them so that your prevention detection layer is beyond Trellix, right? So you're not dependent only on one vendor, right? So once you have that integrated security approach on your security operations, you have a much better planning layer, right? So if there is an alert that is coming from your high risk asset or high value user, right? Because that is what you did at the planning stage. That is the visibility you got at the planning stage. Once that alerts come in the XDR window, your security analyst can say, hey, this is an alert I should start investing my time in, because this VIP user is important. This asset is important to me, right? Because when I go back and talk to my customers, they say my biggest problem is how to prioritize threats, right? So if I keep on getting 100 alerts a day, but my team can only handle, say, 30 to 40 alerts. Now, what do I do with the other 60? Or How do I prioritize? Which are the initial 30 or 40 threads that I should look at? The XDR platform, once it integrates with your asset management solutions, vulnerability management solutions, and your existing prevention, detection, and response layer, can give you that visibility. So that is Trellix approach in giving a one pane of glass via our XDR platform.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Arvind. Now, considering the need for the integration, mentioned by Arvind, how can security leaders strike the right balance between preventive measures and response strategies when it comes to ransomware incidents?
I'm grateful because you asked this question. It is absolutely pertinent. And right after what Arvind mentioned, and I'll take a leaf out of Arvind's feather here, when he spoke about VAPT, right? That's where the assessment comes into picture. Now, assessments are absolutely required, very, very important, and reassessments are also required. So it's not about one assessment at a time, there needs to be a continual program for this VAPT and all sorts of assessment, because that is something which is going to give us the insights where exactly the gaps and if at all something has to be patched. Now, to answer your question, Khushbu, ransomware basically in its most sort of basic form, what does it mean? It means, data is captured, encrypted, and held for ransom until a fee is paid. That's exactly what the definition of ransomware is. Now, the most common forms of ransomware delivery are through emails, websites, links, apps. The diamond doesn't around nowadays, right? We all get those very suspicious links, and unfortunately, few of us, they click on it and you know what happens there. So, security leaders, according to me, can adopt sort of what I call as a five-pronged approach to strike the right balance between the preventive and the responsive actions. First being prepare, the second is prevent, third is detect, fourth is remediate, and fifth is recover. So if you look at the entire security fabric and the posture, almost anything and everything falls within these five sort of principles, very, very important. Now, of these, the prepare, prevent, and the detect stages are preventive, whereas the remediation and recovery are responsive. Now, to cite an example, a few examples of preventive would be, first of all, educate your employees, train them well, thoroughly. That is absolutely required, because as we all know, the threats mainly come from within. Humans are the weakest link. That is something which is a doctrine that which we all of us know. Now there are a couple of other factors into this. How do we prevent this? So first comes the system level prevention. Once we talk about the employees, which is the human factor, the second being the system level. Now, within system level, first of all, make sure that we take backups. There is nothing much important than backups. We need to have backups. Like I said earlier, it feels as if it's a trivial sort of an element, but it's the most important element, because once you are hit by the ransomware, the only thing that can save you is backups. So unless and until you plan to sort of cough up that kind of fee that the ransomware attacker has asked. The second being restrict the code execution. Third is authentication. You need to have appropriate authentication in place. Restrict all admin and system access. All right, is just on need to know basis only. Maintain and you update the software, keep updating the software appropriately. Then you need to kind of also have robust filtering. One needs to also have blocking of email attachments and so on and so forth. But this was all about the system level. The second is the network level. Now, in network level, the most important element, and you must have heard about this, is zero trust. It is very, very important to sort of implement and configure a zero trust sort of an environment. Just close and shut all the doors first, and then, depending on the business and its need, then open up filtered access to the environment. That's exactly what zero trust is. Don't trust anybody around at all. The next being DLP. It's very important to have a data leak sort of a program within our organization. That's very, very important. Whether it's an email DLP, whether it is an endpoint DLP, it's all required as such. Nowadays, it has become very straightforward, and it's an ask that all government regulatory organizations also have. And the last being the UTM, Unified Threat Management. So to which Arvind did mention a single pane of glass. So you have a lot of tools available in the environment, but how does one sort of manage it, monitor it, track it, and hence then go ahead and recover or resolve tickets? So
Yeah.
that's where the unified threat management comes into picture. So I think these would be preventive as well as responsive measures. One aspect is because of the new age DPDP Act in India, it is absolutely essential now, and that's a government mandate that every incident has to be sort of reported to the appropriate officials. And if it is not reported, then it's itself is a breach. So from the communication standpoint, this needs to be sort of done properly, communicated internally as well as externally as well.
Great, great, wonderful. Arvind, can you shed light on how Trellix solutions align or help organizations in regulatory requirements like those defined by SEBI, Certain, TRI.net, and all the ones that have been defined here?
A very interesting question. I think I will divide these various regulatory bodies into two parts, right? One is, from a prevention or a threat perspective, which is, again, or depending on which regulatory body we're talking about or which guidelines we're talking about, they will eventually divide our approach into 5 steps that we've talked earlier, which is planning, preventing, detecting, respond, or recover. Right? That's one set of guidelines. So there are one set of guidelines which are around this. The second set of guidelines like TRI, DOT, and so on, SEBI, for example, a few names that you took, they are around data, right? And Nina talked about DLP. So let me start with that because that is a must when it comes to data. For a successful DLP project, you need to, number one, classify the data, understand what data is important for you, right? So that you can protect it. So talk to the right data owners, the right data creators within your organization and understand where the data lies so that data owners should be the owner of a DLP project, not the IT. Right, so this is a business-driven project. So that is a must. And all these guidelines talk about data, how data is captured, how data is stored, how data is communicated and protected, and so on. Right. So a lot of guidelines around that. So Trellix does provide a very comprehensive DLP solution around this, which can then be integrated with third-party solutions for right management and encryption and so on. So it becomes a comprehensive data security solution, right? So that addresses one set of guidelines that comes from these governing bodies. The second set of guidelines, which we talked about earlier, is around the prevention, detection, response, and recovery. And that's again where Trellix plays a very important part because we are there in the SecOps where we provide an XDR solution for, as I said earlier, to give you a single pane of glass. But also we also provide the prevention layer, right? So Nina was also talking about the prevention layer earlier. Commit be prevention on the endpoint, on the cloud, on the network, or on the email. We are everywhere, right? What keeps the business running is prevention. Right? Let me give you an example. In last 24 hours, I've been talking to a lot of customers who've talked about a cyber party. Okay, so there is a threat in the Indian government, Indian agencies, which was supposed to start as of yesterday, where certain countries are supposed to target Indian agencies, right? So this is a very big news that came out yesterday, right? And since then, I've been talking to a lot of customers, and every customer, number one, aim that they have is to prevent as much as possible. So business keeps on running as long as your prevention layer is strong. So how do you make your prevention posture much, much stronger? How do you consume threat intelligence from third parties? Add that to your prevention layer. That's somewhere where Trellix can help, right? Trellix has 1 billion plus sensors globally, which gives us a visibility of all the threats that are happening everywhere. Right, so we are the ones. So our endpoint security solution, network, cloud security, these all becomes sensors for us, which can provide us the threat intelligence of everything around us, and then we provide this as a free service to our customers. So we call some that as its insights. So insights is freely integrated with our XDR. So irrespective whether you integrate your third-party firewall, third-party IPS, third-party endpoint, doesn't matter. It will automatically correlate with our intelligence and tell you what if this campaign, this threat is of a particular campaign, and what is the severity of the campaign. Should you spend more time on that, from a prevention perspective, or from a response or recovery perspective? It gives you a very, very clear strategy around that. So it really helps our customer not only to comply with these guidelines, but also to make sure that they have a confidence in their data protection strategy or their infrastructure security strategy.
Got it. Got it. On that, Ninad, building on the regulatory aspects that Arvind just mentioned, what strategies do you believe would help organizations stay ahead of the curve in the ever-evolving landscape of this ransomware threats?
Well, I mean, before that, I mean, I just wanted to also add to what Arvind mentioned about DevSecOps, right? I mean, earlier there was DevOps, and of course there is now DevSecOps also. It's very, very important, very, very pertinent as well, because as from a development standpoint, whatever systems or applications organizations are trying to kind of planning to sort of incorporate and launch, security needs to be an absolute part of it, whether it is from the perimeter, from the edge, or when you talk about applications, even the coding, there are ways and methods of ensuring that security comes into the picture whilst an application is being sort of built or developed. So that's where the importance of DevSecOps comes into picture. It's very, 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 very important. So I would suggest and recommend to everybody that there needs to be an appropriate DevSecOps program within the organization, especially during the application development itself. Furthermore, well, from the regulatory standpoint, right, it's critical for organizations to be absolutely vigilant as far as the threat landscape is concerned, and especially those who fall under the regulatory ambit. I have had the opportunity to work in many of the diverse sectors, including insurance and healthcare and financial domain as well, where regulatory protocols are extremely stringent. I'm sure Arvind would agree with me. Very, very stringent. And of course, it needs to be stringent as well. It's absolute requirement. It not only involves on these sectors, it not only involves PII data, but it also involves PHI data. From the healthcare standpoint, personal health information is absolutely confidential, private, needs to be appropriately protected, supported as well. So since you asked me, I would recommend the following strategies to sort of stay ahead of the curve. First being practice good IT hygiene. Now, what does this IT hygiene mean? It means minimizing the attack surface. It's very crucial and critical for every organization. It's crucial that you sort of gain visibility into every endpoint. And when I say every endpoint, absolutely all assets and workloads running it within the environment. And then keep any vulnerable attack surfaces updated and protected. That's exactly what practicing good IT hygiene is absolutely required. The second being improving the resiliency of internet-facing applications. So whatever is internet-facing or beyond your boundaries, that need to be resilient, that needs to be protected. So that's the second piece. The third piece being implementation and enhancing the email security. Because as we know, a lot of junk comes from email, and a lot of attacks also happen through email. A simple link that somebody gets, an employee gets, and the employee unknowingly just kind of hits that link. You exactly know what's going to happen. So that is going to proliferate into the entire network, and then there's going to be a big, big problem. The next being infrastructure. Harden all the endpoints, and that is something which is most basic, but that a lot of organizations ignore it. Hardening of endpoints is absolutely required. The next being ransomware proof data with offline backups. And I keep talking about it because, like I said earlier, backups are absolutely essential, because that is something which is going to save your soul at some point in time. I'm very, very sure about this. And next being restrict the access to virtualization and management infrastructure. Restrict those access, because nowadays with the advent of virtualization, there are a lot of workloads which run on a single virtual sort of machine. And if that machine is hacked or that machine is probably breached, then there's a big, big problem. You stand to lose a lot of application and workloads as well there. And the next is, of course, I spoke about that zero trust architecture, an absolute must. Everybody should incorporate this within their postures, security postures as well. And then, of course, we need to develop a pressure test and incident response plan. Prevention is one, but then testing is another thing. Testing is absolutely required. And then, of course, if at all there is an incident that happens, which may happen anyway, we need to have an incident response plan. How does one respond to internal, external authorities as well? At what point in time, what needs to be done? So the entire incident response plan is absolutely sort of required. It's a part of the BCP and DR plan anyway. And then, of course, we need to implement a very comprehensive sort of cybersecurity training program. Training program is absolute must. I understand that organization probably shy away from these trainings because they feel it's not important. It's not something which aids the business. But that is absolutely required. And of course, the last but not the least, we should know when to ask for help. A lot of organizations, especially senior leaders, security leaders, they feel as if asking help is not good. But that is also very important. There is no problem in asking for help. You never know, because somebody else might have gone through a similar situation, and that somebody else might also have had solution to this. So
Right.
asking help is absolutely also required.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Nanad, on that. Arvind, in the context of staying ahead, what are organizations like Trellix doing, to enable customers, organizations in creating awareness and training with what Nanad just mentioned, for preventing and mitigating ransomware attacks?
I think there is a need for investment,
Yeah.
both to stay ahead and to stay afloat as well, right? We've seen a lot of threats where the companies have got really impacted financially, right? So it's not only to stay ahead but also to stay afloat. There has to be continuous investment in people. There has to be continuous investment in the skills, right? If we are living in cybersecurity domain, and in this domain, the threats, most of the ransomware happens on a Friday evening,
Yeah.
right? So our life is not that easy. How quickly we can have those skill sets within our organizations, right? That's very, very important. That's where Trellix invested in. So we have a dedicated consultancy team, right? We call them as the Foundstone Services. We have a dedicated consultancy team within Trellix which focuses on enabling our customers and their organization, their teams, from all the aspects, not only from the administrative and operation of the existing Trellix solution, right? That's obviously one part of it where the maximum engagement is, but also if there are advanced forensics skills that are required, advanced analytics skills that are required, threat hunting skills which are required, we can provide all those services, right? Because the kind of world that we are living in, every 2 years the skill set that we have gets expired. It needs to get renewed. There has to be more subscription added onto our skill set, right? And that's where we stay afloat, right? So so we keep on hearing in cybersecurity domain that there is a lack of skill, but that's basically from lack of investments. If there are enough people who want to come in cybersecurity domain. There are enough people who want to be successful in cybersecurity domain. But what's lacking is that investment in skills. So if there are organizations who are investing in their various teams, can it be operations team, can it be threat hunting team, threat intelligence team, and so on. If they keep on investing in them, making sure that they have the latest information, that keeps them afloat, that keeps them protected. Number one. Number two is having the right threat intelligence tool. Right, threat intelligence tool makes sure that your prevention layer is not dependent on only one vendor. Right, so you have a comprehensive visibility of all the preventions that you can have, whether it's on endpoint, network, and so on. Right, these are the two aspects on which both Trellix can help our customers and is helping our customers even today.
Great. Wonderful interaction with you both. Thank you so much for taking out time. Any last thoughts that you would, or any suggestions, any last pointers that you would want to give for our viewers that'll watch this interview?
Sure. Just one piece. I did mention this earlier as well. Like I said, it is not if, but when the attack is going to happen, right? And believe me, I'm saying this. attacks would be already happening within the organization. It's just that we don't know. It's much better for us to be be vigilant and be protected as well. I mean, and organizations, Trellix and all the other organizations, they really help out customers, and organizations to protect their data, protect themselves from these breaches. And like Arvind mentioned earlier as well, prevention, of course, is much better than something which is cure. Preventing is absolutely required, and hence investments are absolutely required. So I would in fact urge to the boards of all the organizations to sort of don't shy away from the investments in security, especially data security. It's absolutely required. It's paramount importance as such. And please go ahead and give this investments, make this investments in the betterment of the organization and the betterment of the customers, because that is one thing which is going to help the organization build trust and confidence for the customers. If the data is protected, the customer thinks, believes, and understands also, and knows that that this particular organization is here to stay, means business, but at the same time means they are giving us that confidence in protecting our data as well. So it's in the long run, it really helps.
Absolutely.
I would just, like to summarize, the approach towards ransomware. Ransomware prevention cannot be a single solution approach. It has to be a comprehensive, layered approach, right? There has to be the AI ML at every layer. It has to be an endpoint. It has to be a network cloud everywhere. It has to be a layered approach. Number two, there is no silver bullet, right? So finally, there would be some gray area where the attackers would play. And that is where your detection layer should be very, very strong, right? You should have a single pane of glass where all your prevention layers and detection layers, whatever they detect at various threat vectors, are able to summarize and give you that visibility at one place so that it reduces your mean time to detection.
Wonderful. Thank you so much once again, Anand and Arvind, for taking out time, joining on this interview. And I think it was a wonderful discussion. A lot of insights for our viewers. Thank you once again.